a season of really church hurt. A lot of feeling spiritually depleted, a lot of emotional stress and depression. So we really want to find a church home where we can really heal and grow in. So God led us here at Eastvale Bible Church, and we were just immediately drawn to just the love that was expressed and shown to us. One of the main things was the representation of male leadership in the house. You guys really loved on my husband, and we loved that, and so that really drew us in. So we came in here ready to work, and then less than a month later, my mother passed away. And, needless to say, that took me out. There were so many Sundays where I didn't want to be here. It literally took my husband, bringing me to church. And those were things that I didn't necessarily share because I didn't know how to. I'm angry, I'm depressed, I'm grieving, I'm anxious. She had cancer, so it was about a year where my father and I were doing caregiving for her. And so getting calls in the middle of the night. So I was very anxious about things. And so those are the things that people come in with and we don't necessarily know, right? And so when we greet people at the door, or we don't greet people at the door, we don't know what people are coming in with. And so it's for us, our responsibility to really kind of show that compassion to people, say a kind word, be mindful of the things we say, things we don't say, because you never know, it might be a matter of a life and death situation for that person. So I'm just gonna highlight just a couple of statistics. There's a lot of content, so if I'm moving kind of quickly, it's for that reason. I want to honor you all's time and making the next session. But just some things that kind of really stuck out to me. When we talk about mental illness, it's believed that there's 1 in every 5 people experiencing mental illness at any given time, right? So there's about 15 people in this room. So at least 3 of us are struggling at this moment. And that could be depression, that could be anxiety, that could be some type of eating disorder, whatever the case might be. 1 in 20 adults will actually admit to struggling with some type of mental illness, serious mental illness. So that could be schizophrenia, so they're hearing voices. They are having constant recurring suicidal thoughts that they're not sharing. I actually think this number is probably higher because if you look at the first part, it says they admit to it, right? A lot of people suffer in silence, and we'll never know. And so that number is most likely probably a lot higher than the 1 in 20. 23% of pastors personally struggle with mental illness. That's real. A couple of years ago, in Chino, there was a church in Chino Hills. The pastor was, I think, around 32 years old, committed suicide. And the wife said he suffered in silence. And to think that he was before the people every Sunday, and people, may or may not have said anything, but he still felt alone in it so much to the point where he decided to end his life. That's scary, and that's sad to kind of think about. 8.6 million people struggle with suicidal thoughts. Absolutely. And then I'll just touch base on the last one. It says 20% of individuals believe that their acute mental illness negatively impacts their salvation. So acute mental illness means they have maybe having a psychotic break, and it's all of a sudden. So maybe they're hearing voices, they're having a manic episode, or they're having reoccurring thoughts of suicide thoughts, and it's getting worse. They feel like it impacts their salvation because, let's be honest, the church doesn't always make it safe for people to share that they're struggling, right? And so I must be a bad Christian if I'm struggling with wanting to harm myself. I must be a bad Christian if I'm hearing these voices. And so they feel like it impacts their faith, their ability to, sorry about that. It negatively impacts their salvation and the relationship with God and the relationship with others. So what do you guys think the church's response has been to people with mental health challenges?
It's been very negative, I would say, because we don't talk about it, or we look at it in the form of, okay, you're in the church, so you should be okay. So it's not talked about, and it's not welcome.
It's not always safe, right?
I was gonna say sound.
Don't ask, don't tell. Type down, yeah. And that's sad to think. Somebody that's sitting next to you might be struggling. They might present happy and smiling on Sunday morning, but you never know, they might be going home struggling with not hurting themselves, right? And so what a missed opportunity. We are the church, right? Pastor just talked about that. We are the church, so we want to make it safe for people to be able to say, hey sis, I'm struggling. It took everything for me to kind of get up and be here on Sunday morning. I know last Sunday I was really going through a lot, and so people kind of talked to me after church. I was crying during praise and worship. It really took everything for me to get up there and do that. And so you just never know what people are kind of experiencing, right? It says 49 to 50% of pastors say they rarely or never speak to the congregation about mental health. Now, this isn't, shading pastors or minister leaders, but I understand that because a lot of them don't feel equipped to do so, right? That would be like asking me to preach a sermon. I'm not equipped to do that, right? But that doesn't mean I shouldn't be aware of what's in the Bible, right? I should be able to recognize the signs of mental health as a leader, even if I don't know how to treat it, even if I don't know what to call it, being able to recognize the signs and possibly referring or connecting them with somebody who could better address them with that. And then it says 90% of pastors provide pastoral counseling, but they never make the referral. A lot of people think, well, I'm meeting with the pastor, so I'm good. Pastoral counseling is totally different from therapy. Jesus and therapy can exist. Okay, we tell people that all the time. God and therapy is a real thing. And sometimes you need both. And maybe you need medication. And there's no shame. Right? Amen. So can somebody tell me, what does compassion mean? In your understanding, what does compassion mean?
To have a, I'm sorry. To have a heart for what someone is going through. You may not necessarily understand it, but you can have a heart.
Yeah. Have a heart.
Tied to empathy, right, for someone.
Okay. Yeah.
Show some concern, show that you care.
Care, concern, empathy.
I don't think, because this is where there was a difference, but I don't know if you really need to know what someone's going through, like, to still have compassion or have a heart.
Exactly.
It's something, because you need, when empathy, I think I made it, I tied to I kind of know what you're going through, so then I'm gonna put myself in your position. If you just know that someone's just struggling, you can have compassion, like, so you can have a heart, just to know.
Absolutely. You don't need to know the details.
Right.
Just say, are you doing okay? Or you don't seem like yourself today. You want to talk about it? Can I pray for you? Something simple like that. So these are generally the 4 different responses that somebody receives when they're struggling. The first one is pity, my least favorite, right? Because I really kind of almost feel like this sometimes comes with the place of, I feel like I'm better than. So if somebody came to you and said, I'm getting a divorce, and you're like, oh, I feel bad for you. And it just stops there. There's no connection. There's no acknowledging the struggle. Divorce is a form of grief and loss, right? Even if it was a difficult marriage, that's a loss, right? And so pity is, not something we need to move past that, right? Then next we have sympathy, where it's getting a little better. We're acknowledging that they're suffering. So you'll commonly see this in the church if somebody passes away, we'll send us condolences. We'll send a card, I'm here for you, thinking of you, right? So we're acknowledging that they're suffering and we're extending sympathy to that person. Empathy gets a lot better because now there's a connection, right? And you perfectly said, I don't have to necessarily understand it, right? So if somebody has a diagnosis of cancer or somebody just lost a loved one, I might not have ever had that diagnosis, but I know what it feels like to be sick, or I know what it feels like to lose a loved one, right? And so you empathize with the feeling that or empathize with the struggle. You don't have to necessarily have had to walk in those direct shoes, but you empathize with what they're presenting with. And compassion, that's the goal, right? So compassion is love in action. Like I said, it's heart. It's moving towards that person. So you can find out somebody just lost a loved one. Maybe they lost a spouse. And you're saying, you know what, sis, I'm really sorry. Let me, I know you got small kids. I'm gonna take them to school. Let me cook dinner for you for the week. Maybe let me clean your house, right? So you're stepping into it with them, right? It's an action connected to it. And one thing with compassion, you have to really be careful. And I experienced this a lot when my mother passed, and it was a lot of my friends. We didn't know, I was the first one to have a parent pass in my friend group. So nobody knew how to respond, right? But the last thing you want to do, and we do it a lot, when somebody loses someone, you text them, hi, I'm so sorry, praying for you, let me know if I can do anything. The last thing that somebody's going to be worried about when they're grieving is just coming up with a to-do list for you to do something.
Exactly.
Okay, and so it takes relationship. Compassion takes relationship too. hey, I know what this person, I know what all that they have on their plate, let me step into it. Now, you wanna use discernment, you wanna pray about it, because we're just not gonna be doing everything for people, right? You know, you wanna use discernment. But really asking God, how can I love on this person in this season? How can I love them through this? And so, again, compassion is love in action.
Another thing that people do sometimes is, in wanting to help, they do something that they want to do to help, not necessarily what you need. Like, I've experienced where she didn't need meals, she actually needed someone to clean her house. But if someone doesn't, well, that's not what I want to do, I want to make you a meal, then you're not really trying to do it for you, you're doing it for yourself.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
you
good
have to
point.
kind of, you know, see if you are gonna help, like, what is it, like you said, maybe it's just taking the kids to school so I can just stay home and not be dressed and be in bed, you know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, but relationship, you wouldn't know that about
Right.
a person if you're not in a relationship with them, right?
I know when my mom passed, and I was getting a lot of, I'm sorry for your loss, and I hated that. Because I'm like, I don't want to continue to hear you tell me how sorry you are, and then that was it. It was like, you know, not coming to see about me or how much, it was just, I'm sorry for your loss.
Right.
And at one point, I just like, can you please stop telling me that? Because that's not something I really want to hear. I don't want to hear your pity for me, not at all. You can come alongside me.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear you constantly telling me I'm sorry for your loss. That made me feel worse.
Yeah, and I get that, but you know, people often they don't know what to
We
say.
don't.
So I just don't feel the space for something, right? But again, it all goes back to relationship. You know, knowing that person. Maybe you might not have a close relationship, but you know somebody else that does. Right? So how can I help sister or brother so and so? You know, what can I do? And being anonymous, right? It's heart driven, not ego driven. You're not doing it to be like, oh, I did such and such for this person. I think that's all I have.
And sometimes an event like that causes the relationship to develop or strengthen. Because then that's your opportunity, even though it's a bad one, for you to get closer to that person by being the one to come in and help them to understand, hey, I've gone through that too. So I know what I can do for you without having to ask. And then it strengthens and develops a relationship with that person. And they'll realize like, wow, I didn't know you went through that too.
Yeah.
And it helps.
Yeah, the heart-to-heart conversations creates connection. You're right. I love that. So this is going to be an opportunity. We're kind of in 4 tables, so I'm going to ask these 2 tables to be one team. These 2 tables to be one team, and one team, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So we're going to take an opportunity just to kind of walk through the scriptures. And so I pulled out 3 parables that we're going to pull out instances of compassion, unity, empathy. I just want to see what you guys see in these parables, okay? So team 1, you guys will have Good Samaritan, okay? And you want to write it down. That's Luke chapter 10, 25 to 37. So this is
This one? Okay.
Luke chapter 10, verse 25 to 37. Group 2, you'll have when Jesus raises Lazarus. So that is John 11. It's 1 through 44. I know that's a lot of scriptures, but it goes quick. Okay. John 11, 1 through 44. In group 3, you're going to have the story of the widow's son. That'll be Luke 7, verses 11 through 15. So we're just going to take a couple minutes to discuss the different scriptures that were provided to your team. And again, I want you to kind of draw out instances of compassion and empathy and just kind of whatever jumps out at you in that scripture. And then we'll come back and kind of record it. You guys got it? Or you need me to repeat the scriptures? Group 3, Luke 7, 11 through 15. Group 2, Jesus raises Lazarus, John 11, verse 1 through 44. And group 1, the Good Samaritan, chapter 10, Luke chapter 10, 25 to 30. So Luke 1, group 1, I don't know if you guys want to join together.
Yeah, we're going.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, come on over, y'all. Welcome. Appreciate it. Come on over.
So you're gonna discuss it together as a team, and we'll discuss it now all together.
What did you say?
Are we eventually coming back over there? Or we gonna
Yes.
stay on the river? Oh.
$25, $37.
Oh.
Yeah, it says, and the lawyer stood up and put him to the test, saying, Teacher, what shall I say? What shall I do to inherit eternal life? And he said to him, what is written in the law? How does it read to you? He answered, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And then he says, you have answered correctly. Do this and you will live. But wishing to justify, he said to Jesus, and who is my neighbor? Jesus replied and said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among robbers, and they stripped him and beat him, and he went away, leaving him half dead. And by chance, a priest was going down on the road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise, a Levite also, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan who was on the journey came up to him, and when he saw him, he felt compassion. And came to him and bandaged his wound, pouring oil and wine. And he put him on his own feet and brought him to an inn and took care of him. On the next day, he took out 6 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper and said, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I return, I will repay you. Which of these do you think to be a neighbor to the man who fell into robbers' hands? And he said, the one who showed mercy towards him. And Jesus said, go and do the same.
So, we learned already that compassion calls action.
I like
In this parable,
compassion response.
the action is taken by
compassion,
absolutely.
but it also
Everybody comes on fire. Oh, I'm sorry for you and all that stuff. At the point,
too late.
you want to put the action,
So that's the
he
concern.
starts to show compassion.
So, not just at that point, though.
See about
Compassion.
wake up.
Oh, yeah. Like, even if he does needs more, I'll pay when I come back. So, compassion doesn't stop there. Right? It's like, I think I mentioned earlier, people come and have a death. They might make a cake for you. But we haven't stopped that day. At that point, you still need it for them. So you have to continue to check on those people and express compassion as an action, because that's what compassion is. You have to do something, not just do it one time. It's continuous.
So hard, that's good. Yeah, they can talk about hard change.
Right.
Then the thought would be that you will continue to do that, but also to that, Brother David, is you, that would in turn help you. And then you start having compassion
They really
that
got
you actually show, right?
They in.
Like, oh, in that, for someone that you don't know, show that, right? It's like they give to someone, wow, that makes sense.
Yes.
It becomes reciprocal.
Right. And
Actually, the Samaritan did.
Yeah.
Love the neighbor as himself. Because as a person, if you were that person that was beat up and robbed on the side of the road, you yourself would have took care of yourself like the Samaritan did. You would have went to the nearest inn, took care of yourself in a way that, hey, I'm getting better. So I think you took that to the book, love your neighbor as yourself.
These people were that walk by. These people that walk by is the cost for a Levite.
Right.
And it was Samaritan. Probably like, but wasn't even in that, right? What thoughts happen. Right. He was teaching. But this priest and this Levite, it was on his side. Those are walking on fire. Anyway.
So the most despised, my scripture says despised. So the most despised person is the one that has compassion. And like you said, who would think that would be. That's crazy. It's a priest passed by. You're like, wow. That goes that ties into my but our priests are so-called saved men of God are not what they
Christ to show.
in reality.
My verse is that God has a whole touch about
Did my
He's hard.
It was for everybody.
All right, I'm hearing some really good discussion. We wanna maybe bring it back, cause I know we're short of time. Bring it back if you're ready to share out. So group one. Group one, ready? So you guys tell us, we're all familiar with the Good Samaritan story, right?
Yes.
What did you guys see in terms of compassion? What stuck out to you guys regarding this parable? Group one, the Samaritan.
What I got from it was they can have selective compassion. You know, they even had compassion for people who they probably shouldn't have had compassion for, because the Levites and these people didn't interact with each other in a good way. But you have compassion for whoever needs compassion, and you can't be selective about exercising that compassion.
We also talked about it being continual, because afterwards in the story, he actually even left money after the fact, after he met the Samaritan, left some money, or said, let me know if any bill that this man incurs, I'll take care of it. So what we talked about, how when someone passes, people may give you these great gestures, but then that's when it stops. They don't continue to check on you, they don't continue to provide, services. And then we also looked at the people that did pass it by. Initially was a Levite and a priest, which you thought would have a heart to do those things, but it was someone who talked about a despised individual, had the heart and the compassion to live out God's word, right? Of loving God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and loving your neighbor as yourself. He actually exhibited those behaviors naturally, love and action, as we talk about.
Absolutely, yes. You guys hit the nail on the head. I love that. Group two, Jesus raises Lazarus.
Ooh, that it was enriched with so much stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We came up with a few. I will start off with verse 3, where, let me get to it, okay. Where it says, so the sister sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. And so that's just showing they know the concern that he actually has for them. And so sending out that message, the one you love. So that's a sense of concern and compassion too as well.
Okay, then we have verse 7. And then he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. which shows his concerns of going back to where the one he loved had died. And then, you know, we have the verse 15, I'm glad for you that I wasn't there, that you may believe, but let's go to him. Jesus is still, and he knows Lazarus is dead. Their misconception of he's just sleeping. Because of Jesus' statement, but he's like, okay, let's go. I'm going back to show my concern, my compassion, and do what I need to do. And then we go, you know, all of the while, you know, Jesus show is going. Mary's like, when he gets there, you know, Lazarus been in the tomb for 4 days. And Mary's like, yeah, he's like, well, your brother will rise again. Mary's like, yeah, I know about the resurrection. I know later on he'll rise. And Jesus is like, no, he's gonna rise now. And so, but the compassion part of that, as he sees them weeping and crying, that he weeps.
Yeah.
In verse 35.
Yeah. So you see the concern.
So no one can ever say that Jesus never shed a tear.
Yeah.
Right? You know, he cried because his compassion for not only the one he loved, but his family.
Right.
Mary and Martha.
Yeah.
Like he's there as a comforter. In time of need.
Absolutely.
And then bouncing all the way back up to verse 8, his disciples say, Rabbi, just now the Jews tried to stone you and you're going back there. So it shows that the commitment, the relationship, willing to, as you said, come alongside and go through the fire with your church member friend to make it clear that, hey, I'm here for you.
Right. And then Pastor, I love everything you guys said. Pastor talked about it as well, about sometimes it takes sacrifice and care, right? But you know, even when they brought Jesus the news, and we're going to talk about boundaries a little later on, he didn't rush to the main, right? He used discernment, right? He knew what was going on, but he used discernment. And so I think that's something that we too have to really be mindful of how we care, right? There's boundaries in caring too. In group 3, the widow's son.
Well, we decided that by reading the scripture that the lady lost a son, only son. There was some compassion there when they brought the body out. When they brought the body out, there was a lot of people they would gather around. They brought the body out, showed compassion there. But when Jesus saw it, he saw that the lady was alone. He showed compassion to her and told her, weep not. Because he is the resurrection. He knew what was going to happen, what he had to do. But he showed that compassion, but he told her not to weep. Because he was getting ready. The Bible says, when you've done all that you can do, stand. So he was getting ready to show her who the resurrection is. And he told that young man, rise. But the people showed that compassion by bringing that body out, helping, doing the part that they're supposed to do, helping the lady. But that was fine. But when Jesus looked at that lady and saw what she needed, like what he does with us, he showed compassion and told her, stand. Let me show you what I can do. And showed that true compassion only he could do. Amen.
You know, Jesus didn't have children, but that didn't stop him from empathizing. Showing compassion, right? He was still able to empathize with her when she's in mourning, she's grieving, and so he stepped into it unapologetically.
I think a lot of this stuff too is tied to our motivations, right? Like, why are we doing it, right? Sometimes, as you said earlier, we do it because, we feel it's good for us. It's good for us to get back, all right? Let me call it, I should do those things. Whereas a heart will, that continual process really speaks to our motivations, right? Because it's now something we actually are feeling versus, I know I'm a good person. I should call my brother. I should say hello to Lewis, right? And versus it being an action. Yes, I should. You know, so I think it's tied to our motivations. Is why are we doing it? And that's what God will seek. What's our motivation behind all of that, especially in those situations.
But what it does too is when you move in a manner of and having compassion in the way that God has called you to do so, it changes you. It changes. You're doing something to help someone, but the blessing that you get from it, it changes your heart.
That's
It
good.
opens you up to do more things that God has called you to do. The thing that continues to come to my mind when I read about putting on the full armor of God is that when God says that I'm a God of peace, you put on the shoes of peace, and everywhere you go, because you're representing Him, His Spirit lives in you, and you're representing Him, you need to be moving in peace. And when you get that mindset of just, stepping out in peace and having a heart of His, then whatever you're doing unto the Lord. So that's how He's changing.
Should be a reflection of Him, right?
And that's good stuff. I was thinking of obedience and sacrifice, right? Because when we're doing something out of obedience, we're doing it because we do it out of sacrifice, but it's all good, right?
Absolutely. Thank you guys for participating in that. So we're gonna again kind of keep moving because I don't know if I'm gonna make it through all the slides, but they did say they'll send it to you guys. And so if you have any questions, please, let me know. But next we're gonna talk about verbal and nonverbal ways to show compassion. So one key way to show verbal compassion would be reflective listening. And so what that would look like, anytime you're reflecting something, you're mirroring it, right?
Right.
And so if somebody tells you, hey, I'm really struggling with anxiety, I don't know what I'm gonna do with my kids, I just lost my job, what your response would be, so it sounds like what I'm hearing you saying, you're kind of having trouble kind of balancing things right now. You're struggling with anxiety, is that correct? We will tell you either yes or no. And you kind of have this back and forth dialogue until you actually clearly hear what they're saying to you. And that's key because sometimes, we're in a rush and somebody tells us something and we run off and we totally miss the message, right? So we want to make sure we're clearly understanding what is being communicated. The next one, minding your tone and your tongue. Okay. We always hear what it say. If you don't have nothing nice to say, don't say it, right? And then it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And one that I feel that is not true. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words don't hurt. Words hurt. Words sting. Right? And so when we are, or as we should be demonstrating compassion and empathy, we want to be mindful of these things, what we're putting out there. Okay. Being able to clearly state your intention. Sometimes we get so caught up in emotions, we commit to doing things that we might not even have the bandwidth to do, right? And for somebody that might just experience the loss, and you make yourself available to them in some way, they reach out to you and leave them unread, that causes a lot more damage, right? And so you want to be mindful, and we know things change all the time, but just communicate. Like, I thought I was going to be able to help in this way, but then be connected with somebody that can help, can stand in the gap for you in this way, right? So keeping your word, nonverbal, that's pretty straightforward. Being approachable, relaxing your face. A lot of us have that face. I know I have that face. I'm working on it. But just, you want to be approachable, right? People are hurting, and if they feel like they can't reach out to you, that kind of presents as a barrier, right? So we just want to be mindful of our nonverbal communication as well. So what are some things that we feel cause people not to show empathy or compassion? Not to show empathy or compassion.
Some people don't know how.
Yes.
Just like we don't really know how to forgive. Most of the things that we know right now, we're taught or they're learned through our environment or how we were raised by our parents. Like when you're siblings, you're fighting and you hurt each other with physical harm, one of the parents will say, I'm sorry. You're just repeating, I'm sorry. You don't even know what that means. And as you get older, your parents still don't know how to teach you true forgiveness. And all you know how to do is say, I'm sorry. So the same thing is for empathy and compassion. If you've never been in a home that has intimacy between a man and a woman, not the sexual part, but you don't see any of that sensitive stuff or caring stuff, then you don't know how to go about that in your early young life, let alone your young adulthood, and then middle age. So you never really know. So a lot of people don't understand it and they're just cold.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
Yeah, and just to piggyback up with Orlando, it's if they have not received it, they don't know how to get it.
Right.
That's right. And just to piggyback on what she said. No, I say that because as a retired correctional officer dealing with the California Youth Authority, which is the most deadliest youth in all the states, you have to have that compassion. What I've seen, you wouldn't make it without it. And sometimes they look at it as a sign of weakness. And so they shut you down. You know, my dad's all right, be strong, kill him. No, show some love, some compassion. When Jesus put the 7 fruits of the Spirit, he put love first. Why? Because he's love. Then he said joy. Why? When you had a love, you got joy. Then after you have those two, you will have peace. And the rest comes after that. But people have to learn that everything that we have belongs to God. Everything we need, he has. The Bible says, be anxious for nothing, but in all things, prayer, supplication, and thanksgiving, let your request be made known unto God.
Yes.
2 more hands and then we're gonna.
A lot of times people don't show compassion because they're hurting.
That's right.
They're hurting, and we all know the thing, hurting people hurt people.
Yeah.
So instead of showing compassion, because they're going through, so they actually know what it feels like, and they just hurt the next person.
Right.
Take whatever's inside of them out on someone else.
And sometimes it's unintentional hurt.
Yeah.
Right? It took my friend, we just had a conversation and said I was struggling, my mom was struggling with this for 2 years and I didn't say anything. And they're like, we noticed you were lashing out at us, but I was angry, right? And I didn't necessarily know that I was responding to people.
Right.
I would say, the question will call is not to show empathy or compassion, maybe because we're too quick to be nosy or to judge. Like, or he's dealing with, like, struggling with drugs, or he always been a drug addict. But why?
Right.
What did he go through as a kid? Or he lost his job. Why? He's struggling with alcohol. Why? And we're so quick to not help because of what we think. We don't see the outside. Oh, you lost your job. Well, you should have been an adult. You should have been more responsible. You got kids. You should have been doing this now. Like, no, he dealing with some things. And we're not worried about what the heart is feeling. We're worried about the physical appearance. And that's why we're so quick to not.
That's a perfect answer. I don't know are you gonna go over, maybe in your slides, but so when someone has had a difficult life, let's say, okay, and so it affects how they perform today as an adult and some of their, I don't know, their profession and stuff, and they have say they carry their self a certain way where they're mean and they don't know how to communicate and their delivery is terrible, okay, so that can also make you be like, I want to feel for you, but what is that going to do? Is that going to change how you do, you know what I mean? So my thing is, how do you deal with that kind of, behavior or
Personality.
personality?
Typical personalities. I think it goes back to what this fine young man said. To judge, and we might not be intentional about judging, but realize that people are carrying things that we might not be aware about. And so it's an excellent opportunity to really just maybe pray for them, right?
Okay.
And then to show you might be the person that's showing compassion that they've never experienced. And
Okay.
so we have to remember too, as we have to remember too that it's not our job to change people's hearts. Right? That's God's business, right?
Yes.
All we are supposed to be is a reflection of God's love. That is our role. So knowing your role, again, we're gonna talk about boundaries, knowing your role in this exchange. And that's a lot to put on yourself, right? It's not your responsibility to help people work through their trauma if you're not a therapist.
Right.
Right? So
And love covers all things.
it does. It does.
Another thing that I noticed, and probably all of you, the hardest person on the outside is usually the softest person on the inside. Because they're protecting
What did you say? I'm sorry.
the person who has the hardest outer exterior, they're tough, they're hard, nothing bothers them. And
in reality, it's the softest person on the inside, the most compassionate individual you'll ever be. And what they're doing is trying to push you away. But if you continue to just say pray, say hello, just a simple hello sometimes. Remember once years ago, a guy he had been around for a long time, he got in trouble at work, and people would talk down to him. And I just did the simple thing, say good morning. Then after a while he asked me, why do you talk to me? I said, well, you don't look like the person you're calling. We became really good friends. And that dude was hard. I mean hard. And that's what happens. People are protecting that soft spot because they don't want to be hurt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for some, it might be the, I'm so sorry.
Last one, and then we're gonna.
No, I was just gonna say, similar to Lewis, there was a gentleman in another church that I was at, he was, his father was a racist, he was grown up, I met his wife, and she and I connected. And then when I go to church, I give her a hug, and I give him a hug, and he like, like this. But after, week after week, he saw me and I was coming anyway. And so after a while, he just kind of got ready for me. And next thing I know, when he and his wife were doing something, he'd say, "Call Miss Cheryl," I want to go. And they would text me everywhere.
But it took you being that light, it took you stepping out of your comfort zone. It took you looking past what they were presenting with to look at the heart of the person, right? And so that's exactly what it takes. But if we kind of get hung up on what we see, it can really damage relationship, right? And so we talk about compassion, but there's a thing called compassion fatigue. Okay, is anybody familiar with this term?
Yeah.
Yes. And so compassion fatigue is basically you're just on E, right? It's often for people that are in caring roles, right? So therapists, leaders, ministers. It's not that you don't want to care, you just on empty, right? It gets very hard to hear day in and day out of people's traumas, their stress, the things that they're going through. And so we get fatigued in that way. And so I'm not going to go over all of these signs of it, but you can just kind of look through, and I'll just kind of highlight a couple, some signs of compassion fatigue. A person might just be withdrawn or isolated from people, right? And I remember a situation at the church actually, and I was just left a young women's Bible study. And it was a very heavy session, and I think I was talking about how I was feeling, the anxiety I was feeling, and doubt I was feeling about being a mom and not having one. And so it was really heavy. And so I came out, I'm like, hey, nobody's here, it was like 1 o'clock. So I called my husband, like, hey, can you come pick me up? I'm over here. And so I just needed a moment to decompress, right? I just needed time to myself. I just needed to think. I just needed to breathe. And then we love the sales, and they're always so joyful and cheerful. And they came out the church, and I didn't know if anybody's here, and they were engaging with me. And they're like, no, we're not gonna leave you by yourself. And I'm like, oh, I just really want to be alone. That's what thinking in my head. But I appreciate that they showed up like that. And so, just again, some people might just be withdrawn, and it's not necessarily because they don't like people. It's not that they're antisocial. Maybe they just got a lot going on, right? So emotional, it's distress. You might be detached or just indifferent. So somebody's telling you something that really should kind of prick your heart, and you're just kind of like, you just don't have it to give. I know a lot of people felt like that when we kept experiencing our African American males being killed. It was just like another thing, it's like what you feel hopeless, right? So those are just some signs of compassion fatigue. Do you guys, anybody have an example, maybe one example of maybe a time?
Just with caregivers, actually,
Yes.
when someone is caring for a loved one, and I mean, they usually say that the person that they're caring, the caregiver is the one that goes out before the person that they're caring for.
Yeah.
But when they're caring for a loved one, that can be a whole lot to where they just need to like, you know what, I need to disconnect. And that's why it's so important for people to come in to assist when you're caring for someone. So that love that you are giving out and the compassion that you are giving out, it can be, you can have it to come back to you to where it can be energized, so I've seen that happen.
Yeah, I met a lady and her husband, in, somewhere between here and South Africa, okay, I can't remember exactly where in the airport, okay? And, they were with a group of young people, a couple of them with their children, and they had been on a mission trip. And the gentleman was a minister, it's a church somewhere here, I can't even recall where he said, but at any rate, they were helpful to me, but the main thing that I wanted to say was, he had introduced me to that term of compassion fatigue, because they had been in the mission field for so long, and he and his wife were, they went out to build a school or something, but this was something that they could do because where they were all around people who were in need and in poverty. They've been doing it for years, and they were just the burnout.
Yeah. I said ministry is not easy, right?
It's not.
Ministry is not easy.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Ministry is not easy, not at all. My husband and I, years ago, I became a deaconess in 2008. I think he became a deacon in like 2007. And during that time, my mother had a major stroke, and I took care of her literally for 12 years. 12 years of just constantly taking care of her and training to be a deaconess at the same time. Daughters that were young during that time. Then after that, we started Eastvale Church. We started this church. So, it was a lot of just ministry going forth doing that. And just so many other things that started, form. And even right now, I have a sister who is in the hospital who is unresponsive, and I'm constantly going back and forth to the hospital right now. So I was just tired like all the time, and I did not realize what was going on with me, and I was just like, and I'm constantly just giving, and just not being poured back into it. And I was just like, what is going on until I burned out. So that's what you don't want to do. Right. You don't want to burn out. Although and your heart is still saying you want to continue to give because it's your heart, and you just want to continue to do it, but your body is saying I just can't. And so I was just really what caught my attention just the other day was I was talking to Pastor, and he was asking me how my sister was doing. I'm just like, oh, she's doing good. I said, I'm going to the hospital, daily to be with her and do things. I said. And then one week he called me, and I said, oh, I hadn't been there in a couple of weeks. And I said, I felt bad. I said, but I'm tired. I said, I'm mentally tired, and I'm just tired. And he said, that's okay. He was just like, take a break. He was like, just take a break. He was like, and I was like, didn't even think about it. I was like, I didn't think it was okay. It was like, I need to be there. So he was just like, just take a break. So that compassion fatigue, it's real.
We have to know our limits. We're not Jesus.
No,
right.
And even he rested.
And even he rested. Exactly. So we have to know our limits. And so thank you everybody for sharing those stories. So I put what are some ways we can avoid compassion fatigue, and now looking at it, I don't know if it's totally unavoidable, right? Because I think sometimes just being in ministry, there's going to be some seasons where you just have to grind, right? And you said it, like the church planting, it's just you're going to be overexerting yourself, and it might just be for a season, but let it be for a season. It's not a lifestyle. Okay.
I like that you said that.
A season. It's a season. It's not a lifestyle. Now I don't know how long that season is for you.
Right.
Right. And so one of the best ways that I know to kind of really set boundaries is, to avoid compassion fatigue is setting healthy boundaries. Now boundaries gets a lot of a bad rap sometimes. People think it's a negative thing. Boundaries preserve. They preserve relationships, they preserve your peace, they preserve sanity. So boundaries are a good thing. So I think one of the big things is clearly defining what emergency is, right? Everything doesn't need to be brought to pass. Your child's getting in the fifth fight at school. That's not a pastor issue. You need to sit down with your child. And they might need to talk to a therapist, right? And so clearly defining what boundaries, what emergencies are. Clearly communicating what your Sabbath or your rest days are. So I know there's a time where my husband and I, the only day we had off together was Sunday. So we come to church and then it was our time. I wasn't doing, we weren't doing anything else. Avoiding dual relationships. And so this one's important because as leaders, people are going to be emotionally dumping on you a lot, right? It is your role and your responsibility as a leader to make sure you establish and maintain healthy boundaries, okay? And I say that because, sometimes, and I've seen it happen, a person might be going and, hey, I'm really having struggling with my marriage, and they're talking to the leader, and then the leader starts, they're able to relate, but they start explaining and oversharing. And then now the lines are, who's helping who, right? And so you have to be clear, again, what your role is. We want to empathize, we can relate to the struggle, but you need to know where the line starts and where it stops for you, okay? And when you might need to refer, okay? And like you said, somebody said it's hard because we're called to ministry, so we have a heart for people, right? And so sometimes though, having a heart for people, you're sharing very intimate details, and that can be sticky sometimes, right? And so because you feel very vulnerable, you're open. But even in openness and transparency, there's still room for boundaries. Okay.
Just a simple passage of saying no sometimes can be really, I'm learning that. Because within even your whole life, like your occupation, 40+ hours sometimes a week, and some occupations call for you to be compassionate 24/7. And then you step into your ministry and you're doing that, and then you got your family life that you have your role in your family life to be compassionate in, and you're not giving yourself that time. So sometimes, like you said, like just saying no is a very simple, healthy boundary to put for something like that. I don't have time. It's not that I don't want to or desire to, but I have to take care of me first so that I can give you that right amount of compassion, right and healthy way.
And what a great form of self-care. And like I love what you said, it's not that I don't want to, it's not that I don't have a heart for you. I mean, you can even communicate that, but I can't do it right now. I've told Minister Marilyn, and she about there was something she wanted me to do, and I'm struggling with the 1-year-old, right? And so if I don't know a certain amount of time to give me time to plan it out, I just can't, right? And so it's not that I don't want to, it's just I don't have the bandwidth right now to do it. And so, being able to exercise self-care, you can't pour from an empty cup. We all shared and talked about that. So I think this is kind of pretty straightforward in regards to that. I don't think we're gonna have time for a reflection activity. What time are we?
Yeah, time. You're gonna have time. You have time.
Do we? Okay.
Yes.
So maybe I'll just, if somebody, 1 or 2 people want to kind of share on this. So I say, look back on your life. Who has demonstrated empathy and compassion to you, and in what ways? What did it look like? What did it feel like?
2 weeks ago, I had an incident in my home where I had a break-in, and I had to get it repaired because my house was insecure. And I came to church, my house was still open, and I was asking around somebody who could come, and somebody said they could, but then I saw that they were having some issues. I said, can they call me? I said, don't worry about coming. But at the same time, my neighbor came over and I asked, well, do you have any plywood? Because I was just going to, he says, well, let me look at what went on. And I'm standing in my garage, he's looking at it, he said, go in your house, So we was at my house for 2 hours, stripping and fixing up, and told me to go to the store and get a lock and whatever, and I did. I came back, and that same afternoon, next afternoon, it was all secure. But that was that was compassion for me, amazing.
Yeah.
I felt amazing.
And secure.
I did. I felt blessed.
Yes. Yeah. No, I love that. He saw a need and he stepped up and asked you what he could do. Do you all foresee any barriers in extending or showing compassion to people?
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So I guess we might be able to relate to it, like when you set boundaries because out of love and to preserve a relationship. My brother lives in Ohio or Pittsburgh right now, and you know, we all have that family member that's like, hey, I need 20, I need 20. Give me 40, I got you back. Give me 60, like, you never gave me the 20. Give me the 60, and you know, and I remember reaching out to my uncle, just like, I'm struggling, you know, I'm the big brother. I always feel bad that, you know, I have it, but I don't want to give because I'm like, I need to take care of the mortgage, my client, baby, 2 car notes, insurance, like, how do you deal with that? And he said, you know, sometimes you have to tell people no to push them into what they can do. And, you know, and I recall going to our grandparents once, like, I'm in the car, okay, they got it, like, hey, can I borrow 500? Like, no, 5,000. You know? I get back and they said no. I'm just like, what? Yeah. But I came up with the money. Right. You know, and I'm like, you know, saying no, setting that boundary, because if you do it, you always able, then they know they can always come back. Not that they're taking advantage, but they're taking advantage, you know. So I learned that, you know, setting a healthy boundary preserves a relationship.
Yeah, it's that same thing. One with my family, I'm all one they come to over and over. I mean, even if we're having a family gathering, there's 10 people there with cars. Oh, are you gonna stop by the store, or can you? And I had to learn that the Bible says that your no be no and your yes be yes. It never says you have to say yes all the time. And I grew up saying yes all the time. And then frustrated and fatigued because I'm dumping out and no one's dumping in. Right. So even when I had breast cancer, it felt like they wasn't pointing in, but they were still calling me, oh, you didn't call and check on them. I'm like, I'm the one that said. Right. But I'm still dumping out. No one's dumping in. And I had to learn. My no is no, yes is yes, but I had to learn to say no. Right. And not feel bad because I'm saying no. And I could have did it.
Right. And that goes back to knowing yourself, knowing your own limitations, right? And being okay with sometimes disappointing people.
Because I didn't know that you had to set boundaries. You know, I grew up, especially your family. Because they don't teach you that in the house, that you have to set boundaries with people so that they'll stay in their lane. Because they don't want to stay in their lane.
They know how to guilt trip.
I didn't know until I actually heard Joyce Meyer say you have to set boundaries. I never knew that you had to set boundaries.
Right. So what would be a better response? So as servants of the King, having a servant's heart. When we look at Romans, can somebody pull up Romans 12, 9 through 16 for me?
While you're reading that, how do you use this?
Yes, I'm gonna come in.
Okay.
Yeah, I got you.
And if not, we can talk about it after.
Okay. No, thank you though. How much time do I have?
You only have a minute.
You have 5 minutes.
Oh, say 9.
Romans 12, verses 9 through 16. Somebody can read that.
Don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. Don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. Hate what is wrong. Hold tightly to what is good. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. Rejoice in our confident hope. Be patient in trouble and keep on praying. When God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Always be eager to practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Don't curse them. Pray that God will bless them. Be happy with those who are happy and weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with each other. Don't be too proud to enjoy the company of ordinary people and don't think you know it all. I need to highlight all that. NLT.
You know, we know in ministry there's a lot of different personalities. Right. And so we are called to love everybody. We might not like everybody, but we have to love everybody. Right. And I think Deacon Carroll said in the beginning, you can't be selective of who you show compassion and love to. Right. And so having a servant heart just means just that. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter. Maybe you offended me in some way, but my response should always be love. Right.
And the way we view church is a hospital. It's a hospital. So everybody that comes here they are hurting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how we should look at it. It's not the sense of, oh, I'm a holy roller or I'm better than thou. We all have issues. That's why we're here.
Exactly, exactly. So when people come to you with these issues or these challenges, as a leader, these are just some things to kind of assess whether you're asking these questions or you're just kind of mentally making some observations. When you see somebody that might be presenting with some type of mental or emotional challenge, is it a crisis? We talked about, what a crisis, really being able to assess what it is. Are there physical symptoms of distress? The person might be cutting themselves, so you see marks on their wrist, right? Or they're starting to look very malnourished, things like that, that will kind of alert you that I might need to make a referral. Okay, there's something else that's going on here. Are there substance abuse? Is there substance abuse involved? Do you know if they recently experienced some type of traumatic experience? Did they recently lose a loved one? Did they recently have a car accident? Kind of, again, it goes back to being in a relationship with people. And so when you ask yourself this as a leader, this is when you start making the decision whether or not you get somebody else involved. And so your answer to these is, do I have the skills to help this person? If it's no, right? You feel like you're in over your head. Maybe somebody's a trauma survivor as far as they just were sexually abused and they come and disclose that to you. If you don't have any experience with talking with somebody like that, you can pray for them, but you don't want to do a disservice to them by getting into it if you don't know what to do.
Yes.
Okay, you need to get in contact with somebody that, and hopefully the church will start having some resources and you guys might already have them in place, or ask somebody, who can I refer this person to? Ask me, and I'll do a referral. Can I give adequate time? Again, we talked about people get busy in different seasons. So do I have the time to spend with this person? Sometimes it might be a sacrifice, or sometimes I just really can't engage or sit with them right now. But here, let me connect you with somebody that might be able to. Just not leaving them in that, right? And then again, am I the right person to talk to in this situation? Maybe the person is needing somebody to kind of walk alongside them for maybe a long period of time. There's discipleship groups, there's things like that. So making the right referral, again, not everything needs to go to the pastor, right? Just kind of discerning what you need to bring directly to the pastor, what needs professional help, and kind of going to that.
I think that's good that you stated that if you're not adequate, because some people will feel like they know or they can relate. But like you said, once the person starts talking, if you don't do right with that information, you can actually cause harm with them. So it is better. You're doing better if you refer them to someone,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can check in and just see how they're doing.
Right.
But connect them with somebody that can maybe professional. So back to the chart that you pointed out, I put it in front of everybody. If you don't have it, or you can land yours over here. Sorry.
I'm getting two. You gave us two.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. So yeah, not gonna go all into this, but I can't take credit for this. I went to a mental health symposium.
I'm sorry, I wanted to piggyback off of what Desiree said, because that stays in my mind is that we always say that the church is a hospital, and we always say people come and it hurt. But we also have to remember that when we go to a hospital, when we leave there, we're healed and we're whole. You don't come to the hospital and you don't stay the same way. You leave differently. And so we have to remember that, because we always say that the church is a hospital. We got people are coming, but also remember they should not leave here still injured. Right, and still hurt. So we have to remember that we are a hospital, but we want them to leave here healthy and whole.
Exactly. Thank you. So my time is up, but just to kind of point this out really fast. And so what this is just kind of your own kind of little tool. Like I said, I can't take credit for this. I went to a symposium, mental health symposium at Faithful Central a couple years ago. And the director brought this to our attention. And so it's basically looking at what the issue is, what the severity is, what ownership is, and support, what support might look like, and then who you would refer to, right? And so somebody's struggling with maybe just a lapse in wisdom, right? Or ethical issue, or and it's just causing some mild distress, and it's like kind of like an everyday challenge. Maybe they're struggling on their job. That's something that they can just be connected with a friend, right? But if at any point there's a safety concern, we know that's a direct professional referral, right? If there's some moderate conflict and you're starting to see some functioning issues, meaning the person might be, again, looking malnourished, or they're just having a hard time kind of not in touch with reality, you can maybe talk to pastor, but you also want to, if it's a crisis, professional help. Okay. And I apologize, I'm not able to fully go into it, but if you do have questions, you can let me know. And then also in your handout, it's a self-compassion scale. We didn't really talk about that. We talked about compassion fatigue, but we also need to practice compassion for ourselves, right? Give yourself grace. And then the last one is overcoming compassion fatigue in ministry. There's some scriptural things to help you, and then also some practical tips to help you. So thank you.
You said they're emailing this to us?
Yes, yeah, they said, I think you asked, but I'll just let them know.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. Good job. Tap on the record. Thank you.
Sorry.